Welcome back to the astrology interview. And today I have Guy Hayward with me. And Guy is the co-founder of the British Pilgrim Trust. And that was in 2014, wasn't it, when you set
Yeah,
it up?
yeah.
And you're the co-author of Britain's Pilgrim Places, and you also have this wonderful PhD in music psychology, and you co-set up with Rupert Sheldrake the Choral Evensong Trust. And I think all of this wraps up for you in pilgrimages and the sacredness of life and the journey of life. But before we get into pilgrimages, I just want to ask you, what drew you to set up the British Pilgrim Trust? And as a child, were you always curious about life and what it all meant?
I suppose yes. It's very hard to know always how to answer such a question like that because as you know from journeying with the soul's journey and astrology and the movements of everything, how why something happens and what led to what is actually almost impossible to get to know. But there are a few things start early in life, and I guess I was born to two parents who were Christian Scientists, and Christian Scientists is a very unusual religion kind of founded in 1875 by a woman in America called Mary Baker Eddy, and it was very extraordinary in a way. Like it's a direct connection prayer to with God, and then that heals you. That's the kind of basis of the religion, and it's only through direct connection you get healing. And ingesting substances, for example, of any kind, in order to be better, is seen as not good. You know, because like you're not having that direct connection. So it's very spiritual in the sense of you're in the spiritual realm a lot. But then there was a sort of the way that they treat the body is mysterious, and not sort of matter is unreal. So all these messages were being given to me early on, and I didn't mind it for a while. I became a choir boy at 6 or 7 and sang in Bath Abbey. But by the time got to about 11 or 12, I found I got sort of that rebellious thing where I said, right, I don't believe in any of it, and I'm going to be an atheist, and I believe in science, you know. And then and I thought I was being very clever and very like independent in saying things like that. But I think there was this period before also, which with when I was 6 years old, where before I became a choir boy, I loved nature so deeply, and I ran around in wildflower meadows. And as a child, you always feel so connected to nature, and or you're more connected with the world and life itself. I think there's something. I mean, you learn other things as you get older, but you sort of unlearn that in a weird kind of way, and I think that's the sort of basis, and then I'm sure you're missing out loads of things that are actually important, but I just can't remember them because I haven't
Mm.
quite got my story sorted yet. But then ended up at Cambridge doing the singing and music, and then after that, started this PhD. And at the beginning of that journey, I had a quite a big depression, probably because of the nature of doing a PhD. Like it's known to be a difficult thing. It's not necessarily difficult in terms of how clever you have to be, but difficult in simply like turning up every day and doing 5 hours work on your own with loads of books. And it doesn't sound very much, 5 hours, but it's so hard writing for that long. And yeah, it got tough. So I needed to get out of the depression. I found I saw all sorts of things. I thought it was food, then it was kinesiology. I found, and then I went to this for kinesiology for food intolerances. Then that was not the thing that was making me depressed. And I went to another one in Harley Street as a result, watching the King's speech, because there was a Harley Street speech therapist. And I thought, okay, well, I'll go radical then. And then I went to there, and then they said, you need to buy this crystal to put under your bed. And I thought, right, well, I'm really losing it now. I'm supposed to be a psychologist, and like anyway. And then but I listened because I was desperate, and I was cycling around the Cambridge shopping centre trying to find a crystal shop, and I found one. And then there was this guy, and he pointed at me, goes, "You're going through a spiritual awakening." And I said, "What?" what are you on about? I'm feeling awful. Like this, because spiritual awakening sounds like a good thing. Like, um, and
Okay.
and then he said, okay, well, I can help you. And I said, okay. And then it's a very long answer, but it is the full answer.
Yeah.
I can help you with your journey, but you have to, I'll hold your head and you lie down on this couch for an hour, and and okay, all right, fine. And wasn't very much money, and I just thought, oh, and there was a sort of goldfish bowl nearby with people having their feet nibbled and making all sorts of sounds. It's a very weird environment to be healed in. Um, and got to the end of the hour, and I'd had these few moments where I'd felt sort of like really focused, but I don't know why. He was just in a trance holding my head. And then at the end of this hour, I opened my eyes and it's gone. I'm never going to be depressed again. Like whatever. And it'd been troubling me for a year and a half. I was really worried. It was having quite dark times, and it had gone. Whatever happened had just gone. And um, I said to him, what do I say? And he goes, well, just say thank you. And I said, thank you. And then I knew, and then no, it's never happened again. Never had anything like that again. And did some sound healing with him a few weeks later. And then the morning after, I was at this vegetable stall in Cambridge, and this lady was talking about sound healing. I said, oh, I just did that yesterday. And we got talking, and then she said, I think you should go and see Jill Pearce, and who does sound healing and overtone chanting. And I said, okay, fine. I called her up. She then said, have you heard of my husband, Rupert Sheldrake? And I said, no. And then she said, well, come along to my session, and I'll teach you about these things, and then we'll do family constellations, and it was clean me out of all the money I had. And then I went. And then as I got around the corner, my body felt this, suddenly this, I knew something was happening. I knew I was going to be, there's a big change in my life that day. And her teachings were amazing. And then she also introduced me to Rupert at the end of the day. And suddenly we had this 2 hour chat, and I knew sort of somehow it was a big moment. And he's was very intelligent, asking lots of questions. My professor wasn't asking me, and I thought, wow, this is amazing. And he gave me his book the following day, and I read that, and that changed the course of my PhD. But then I house sitted for Rupert and Jill for a few years, and then their sons brought. Oh no, Jill, that's it. Jill said, you got to walk the river from where you're born, from source to sea, either where you're born or where you now live. Like that's an important rite of passage for everyone to do. And I thought that's an interesting thing to say. So I was at Cambridge at the time. So I walked from the source of the River Cam to Cambridge, trespassing so I could walk along the actual riverbank, which for some reason I thought was the right way to do it. Um, and then and then a year during that year, I also the boys Merlin and Cosmo that brought these two wandering minstrels back for for dinner, and I was in the house, and I went along to dinner, and there's this guy just regaling tales of cooking by the campfire, foraging for herbs, bathing in the rivers, singing to people, everyone he met, and being welcomed into homes and pubs. And I thought this sounds like an amazing life compared to sitting behind a laptop all day and writing and trying to like get approval from these professors who didn't really ever know what they actually wanted. Um, and so I said, well, when I've done my PhD, I'll come for a walk. And so we took a song. We decided we'd take a song back to where it came from, along a river, along the River Medway. The song was called "The Heart Lake Bridge Tragedy," and the we sung it along the route to everyone we met, 70 miles, 7 days. And then when we got to the churchyard where the 30 hop pickers were buried who died in this tragedy, and the song was written about them, there was a couple standing by the monument. And we said, what are you doing here? Because there's no one else in the churchyard or even village. And they said, well, we tried to come to this place 10 years ago. We're now here for 5 minutes. And we said, well, what's your connection to the tragedy? And they said, 3 of my ancestors died in the tragedy. And we said, wow, and have you heard the song? And they said, no. So we got to return the song to the bloodline and not just the place. So we were calling it a song walk. We weren't calling it a pilgrimage. But then we thought something was it was so coincidental, so synchronistic that I had again one of my body feelings that haven't happened that many times, but they happened before meeting Rupert and Jill, and then also after this event, and we thought, well, what's this like? And it's well, it's a journey with purpose, with intent, like a narrative, a quest, and so that was kind of organize the magic around the walking and who we met and when we met them and those sorts of things. And we thought, well, it's a bit like pilgrimage. And we thought, but it doesn't feel necessarily religious what we've just done. We went into a few churches, but and then we realized we looked into the history of pilgrimage, and Henry VIII had banned it in 1538. And so we thought, well, maybe we can bring it back, but without all this belief baggage, that you have to believe this or sign up to this particular sect or church group or Church of England or whatever it is. And because also we really loved the pagan sites as well, and we loved all of it, and we just loved the land really, and whatever it presents itself. And churches are very important because they're sacred places, and how we use them is very important too. So we just thought, let's start a pilgrimage charity, and that's kind of how it started. It's a long-winded journey, and maybe some of that isn't directly related to pilgrimage. I think in the end, like what ended up happening was this singing a song in nature without like a big concert hall and loads of people gathered together who bought tickets to hear you sing. It's where you're just singing it to, let's say, a grave in a monument in a graveyard. It's a very different mode of singing. And I think what was happening inside me was that split that had happened when I was about 7 years old, when I became a choir boy and I suddenly didn't go into nature as much because I was then now going to stone buildings to sing. I think that split inside me was suddenly integrated again. And not everyone needs to have that particular integration where they go out singing in nature, but it was a big deal for me and was part of my story.
I absolutely love the fact it goes back to Henry VIII's ban on pilgrimages.
Yeah,
He did. He went, no, not Protestants. We're not doing that. It's
yeah.
fascinating, isn't it? And you've bought this. I mean, I love coming on the pilgrimages because it takes me back to the being mindful, actually. But of course, being an astrologer, I do believe that astrology is a pilgrimage back to the soul. And that's why I so wanted to talk to you today, because I want to get sort of roll back into medieval times, into how pilgrimages and the sacredness of the soul, but also this connection. Astrology was so important in those days. The church wasn't approval about you can't sort of tread astrology, can't go into the soul's journey or predictions. That's God's
Mm.
department. But the rest of it was very much hugely impactful, especially coming up to the Renaissance time. So I just wanted to know what your relationship is also with astrology and what you do as a pilgrim leader.
Well, I think on a very basic level, the wheel of the year is a really important part of pilgrimage, and it's not just about place. I think as my awareness has grown, and this is the thing about a job, is the job chooses you sometimes, and it's because you need to learn things and you need to actually develop your consciousness, and in the end, obviously, ended up evolving other people's consciousness too. And I think one of the big things for me has been around. It's not just where do you go? It's when do you go?
Yes.
And
Yes.
honoring the festivals of Imbolc and Beltane and Candlemas if it's Christian, or Harvest or Lunazar or Samhain or All Souls Day, all these important moments, and also your name day or your birthday or these time really matters to pilgrimage too, and the time of life. And there are always periods, life transitional moments, burnout, depression, like I had, or um, bereavement, or losing a job, or retirement, or
Mhm.
divorce. There are lots of these life transitional moments that make pilgrimage more like an option. They think, okay, well, I will give 3 weeks or 1 week or 5 weeks or whatever of my time because I have this thing that I really need to work out.
Mm.
And so it's time is really crucial to the depth of pilgrimage. It's not just the where. And so I suppose that plays into one's thinking about the soul's journey because, for example, when I started doing this, all my most extraordinary journeys and pilgrimages were right at the beginning. Like I was going through a shift in order to start this charity, but I don't do it every year now. I don't do a week, even a week long. I really should. It's like shocking. I'm promoting this pilgrimage on a national scale, and I don't necessarily even connect with it myself every year. And sometimes I sort of think, well, what are you doing? That's you're a fraud or you're a charlatan. But actually, I think it's not as simple as that. It's that everything happens in its right time, and I'm facilitating others to do it, and they are doing it in at the right time for them.
But
And
I think, Guy, I think also that there are times, and this is where I think astrology comes into it, that we are doing our inner journey. We don't necessarily need to do the external, but we're still doing the inner journey.
oh
And that's
yeah,
the pilgrimage, isn't it? So it doesn't matter if you're walking a pilgrimage or you're doing, as long as you're doing the work on yourself, and that is the pilgrimage back to who you are.
yeah. I think in answer to your early question, yeah, I think from an early age, the spiritual, the inner, understanding human psychology, but obviously that was where I was at, but also understanding as much as possible about the inner condition. Yeah, it's always been a bit of a drive. Hard to know whether one has a stronger drive on that than other people. It doesn't really matter. It, I think there was that always, just that this inner search. But where that comes from, I don't know.
Mm.
Why I'm more interested in a lot of my mates from uni have gone on to, banking or big kind of
Yeah.
important like fancy jobs, and have done really, really well and I decided to start a pilgrimage charity and be a comedy singer. Yeah, actually, one of the things you did mention was the comedy singing that I do, which is sort of foolish. And um, I think the Fool has been a really bigger part
Yeah, the
of the journey.
sacred fool
This
journey.
the Sacred Fool. I've
Yeah,
tarot card number one, number
yeah,
zero, and actually
zero.
setting out. And that's I feel the archetype of the pilgrim is the Fool, or they're interchangeable.
Mm,
I think they're the same basically.
mm.
Because the fool has a scrip over his back and he's walking off the edge of a cliff and looking really happy. So it's very like a pilgrim. And so that's the tarot aspect. I mean, I came from it was quite straight-laced religious background. My parents are really special people. They're really sweet people. Um, I think you actually met them, didn't you, Sue?
Yes, I
They're on
did.
that
I met your
they're on that
dad. Yeah,
frame.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, I did. Yeah, yeah,
they're
yeah.
really lovely.
Mm.
But they're tarot cards and astrology. I mean, they're like oh that's just what Guy that's sort of thing that Guy gets up to, kind of thing.
Yes.
But also even for me, like it wasn't it sort of crept into my awareness. Like I didn't there wasn't a moment where I thought, right, I'm now starting to be into this. It's like it's slowly but surely it's been part of who I am. And well, actually, in the early days, we used to make decisions based on tarot cards. We'd pull them and at points in the journey. If we had a choice between two things, we pulled the card, and
Yeah.
became like a bit like that. And I think astrology came into my life probably about 5, 6 years ago. I'm not really sure, but I was introduced as medical herbalist and sorry, medical herbalist, but also as an astrologer. And then I met this lady who started this app called The Pattern, Lisa Donovan, and um, she was so impressive, like her ability to just look at your chart and just sort of talk and she said, oh, I started this app. It's doing really well. It's a really serious app, I suppose over time I've softened
Mm.
my rationality towards it, and also um, I think Rupert Sheldrake once pointed out that the problem for astrology and astronomy is that they're kind of at loggerheads because astronomy has all the measurements and all the scientific rationality, but not the meaning. And
Yes,
astrology
exactly.
has all of the meaning, but it doesn't necessarily have all the accurate measurements
No,
all the time.
it's an interesting one. How does it work? But it has to
And
go
it's
archetypal.
and basically these two ways of being or thinking or have to come together. They have to integrate with each other so that the measurements of the heavens can be
Yeah,
updated as we go along and all that kind of stuff.
but Guy, I think this is where I want to go back to the churches and the cathedrals. Were kind of like cosmic diagrams, I think,
Yeah,
built in stone and in light because they reflect the solar movement, sacred time, harmony of creation. I mean, in the old days, in medieval days, we God had created the cosmos, so the cosmos was ordered and meaningful, and we were part of that cosmos. It was seen that we were part of that order. So, and I think I love the fact that each church is east, the eastern door is the door of
yeah,
entrance. Well, of course, in Western astrology, the astrological chart is set at 0 degrees Aries, the most on the east.
yeah.
It's spring, so of course everything is in is intertwined into astrology and astronomy, of course. So
Mm,
I just want to talk to you more about this sort of the key element of kind of when we enter a church or cathedral, we're actually entering, if you like, a model of the universe, and where you
mm.
are with that.
I'm totally with it. I mean, I work with Tom Bree, who's the sacred geometry teacher based in Wells Cathedral, and Wells, York, and Southall have this extraordinary thing where they have a beautiful chapter house, which is sort of an outbuilding. It's connected to the main cathedral, but it's outside, and the doorway entrance to the central pillar of this kind of octagonal room or building is 5.15 degrees, which is the angle of the moon to the earth, and so they are representing the chapter house as the moon in all three buildings, slightly different ways. And if you count the number of steps to the top of from the bottom from the floor to the top of the chapter house, it's 27 and a half in one way, and in the other way, it's 29 and a half. So I can't remember the exact numbers, but it's roughly that. But anyway, it's the range of the lunar month,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
they managed to cleverly do the steps in such a way you could count them either way. And you think, well, I mean, come on, it's
yeah.
like it's obviously about that, and and then you have the nave versus the choir versus the apse and the sanctuary, and how it's purgatory. Sorry, going from the inferno to the purgatory to the paradise, and yeah, they were mapping the inner heavens as well as the outer heavens and wrapping it all up into one building, and placing like angels like Lucifer at certain moments to represent the deepest moment of going into the inferno,
Scorpio.
and just like it just it's and all these buildings can be walked in a certain way. So you're sort of walking the microcosm and touching the macrocosm inside you. And this people go around them with differing levels of consciousness of what they're doing, and
Mm.
it sort of doesn't matter, and it does matter. Obviously, if you're just taking photos, you're attending to it in a different way. Um, but if you're feeling it in your body and you're feeling how each part of the cathedral feels different, you're tuning into what's maybe happening on a grander scale. And then, of course, you've got the stone circles, which were clearly aligned with the stars,
Clearly.
and the clock of time, the time clock of, let's say, Castlereagh Stone Circle in Cumbria, the Lake District. Like those mountains and the way it collects the stars, it's just so obviously um, an astrological thing as well as linking to the ground. It's not
Yeah.
just this separation between the sky and the earth. I think another thing is the obviously there's this tension really in the world right now, and in between religion and spirituality, between the Father Sky and Mother Earth. And Christianity is like has the feel of a Father Sky religion. I'm sure there is Mother Earth in there somewhere,
Well,
but
she'd be the Divine Mother.
it's
Yeah.
it's not foregrounded. Like
Mm.
it's not like the sort of the workings of the jungle, let's say the Amazon rainforest, aren't exactly foregrounded in Christianity. So it's a cultural thing. And um, but what these medieval cathedrals were doing was they were anchoring the heavens, literal heavens,
Yeah.
into the
Divine
earth.
order.
And so by making by having all of these moon, sun, Mercury references in the building itself, they're sort of saying the church and the cathedral has to be a connection point between heaven and earth. So what they're actually doing is saying this is heaven, like heaven is the heavens, and it's not like an abstract concept, and
Mm.
and that's really anchoring for people because it means that it's not just it's like inner and outer at the same time, and that is more grounding for people. It's safer. It's a safer holding structure, I think.
Yeah, and absolutely. I think we also need to make story, don't we, to make sense of life. And I think that, the stone buildings, the structures enable us to make story as we go through our own journey. It gives us a grounding and a structure to work within. And I think the mind likes that. It's a bit, myths also do the same, don't they? The mythical stories give us a kind of structure to make sense of what on earth this is all about. I find that absolutely fascinating. But also this whole sense of astrology being used in every day in the medieval times and the Renaissance times, because they created, well, it was the monks that were doing they were creating the original almanacs, which were kind of timetables of planetary cycles to enable farmers to plant their crops.
Yeah,
The cycles of the moon, and also to look at timings for medical surgeries or bloodletting or whatever they did in those days. And I think that's really interesting, that astrology was so part of the religious and how did you survive? And astrology was part
yeah,
of that, as long as you
yeah,
stayed away from the soul. That was the big thing in the medieval and the Renaissance times. And I think
yeah.
the sad thing for
Sorry.
me is that still there is this sort of difficult relationship between church and astrology.
Well, it's had to be hidden. I think C.S. Lewis was obviously a great Christian theologian and philosopher, and obviously writer of the Narnia stories. But there's
Yeah.
this recent discovery by Michael Ward, who wrote this book called Planet Narnia, who basically, when C.S. Lewis was a professor at Oxford, he was actually teaching medieval cosmology. So he knew what the medieval imagination was creating in terms of Mercury, Mars, Venus, Jupiter, and and he knew all of the symbology of each one. Each planet had a completely different world of imagination attached to it. And so he wrote the seven Chronicles of Narnia to represent the seven known planets in medieval cosmology. And each book maps onto how the medievals saw that particular planet. So that's why each book seems so different in
Yes, of
its
course.
it's so they're all like the Voyage of the Dawn Treader is so
Yes.
different to the Magician's Nephew. So like
Yeah.
they're wildly different, and it's because they were actually the medieval cosmological imagination. So he was
Wow, I didn't know
we,
that.
but he was linking in Aslan all these other things which have more sort of
Yes.
straightforward Christian references. But there was this
Yeah.
whole other Christian reference he was also making, which is this old medieval imagination, which was more attuned to the heavens and the relationship and time and the things. Yeah. So it's, I'd say that's the thing I can answer to your question the quickest is I think is that it's there. Some people know that it was there and like him, and it's in our cultural awareness. It's just not currently explicitly said.
Yeah. So how would you like to see what you're doing and pilgrimage, the whole concept of pilgrimage, kind of bringing back this understanding of astrology and I mean, I know you astronomy as well, but more consciously bringing back that into the fact that we live in this incredible relationship with the cosmos and these wonderful stories, but we don't even know that. I didn't know that about C.S. Lewis, and that I'm going
Yeah,
to
it is.
reread the whole lot.
Yeah, also, but definitely read Planet Narnia because it's sort of
Yeah.
it's, yeah, majestic work, really. Um,
Do you think this is an
I,
important part of pilgrimages or how we can develop pilgrimages now?
I think so. I think pilgrimage is so broad and it's so diverse that I can't say what should happen next in a
Mm,
funny sort of way. It's like the universe is sort of deciding what are the things that are brought to the surface at each stage. Um, I think the importance of astrology for pilgrimage is what I was sort of saying earlier about how we see our own life journey as a kind of uh, an actual journey, a bit like a pilgrimage with different phases and stages, and you can't like necessarily speed up the process. You kind of have to go through this phase in your life, just because that's the way things work, and just be. But you can do pilgrimages at certain moments within those phases to help the process to sort of to integrate and smooth the process to make it less challenging.
mm,
Um, and I also think there's this importance of understanding the quality of time, not just the quantity of time.
yeah.
And I think when you walk pilgrimages on solstice or equinox or the cross quarter days, and you sense that thinning of the veil between the worlds, like for example, on All Souls Day, Samhain, like November the 1st, November the 2nd, there is the veil between you and the ancestors is thinner. That it's easier to be in contact with them, and I think that's because there's a quality of time. And I think
Yeah. Mm,
making pilgrimage around those times, and or obviously then you could go on the individual level. That's more the collective level, but and the individual level is what's your name day. Like I'm called Guy, and I think my name day is 12th of September. Because Saint Guy was actually a pilgrim. Weirdly, he held a staff, and all the imagery of Saint Guy is like a pilgrim. So it's really strange when I found that out.
oh,
Um,
that's incredible.
yeah, really, really strange. He's like known as the pilgrim saint. Like,
It's,
um,
oh my gosh.
yeah, it's weird. And
You've been called to
um,
do this, haven't you? I mean, Guy, I think you're talking about Kairos time, aren't you, rather than Chronos linear time.
yes,
We're
yes,
stepping
exactly.
into. Do you want to have a talk a little bit about Kairos time and what that means for you?
Um, well, I suppose what it means. I'll start with the collective. Like I've noticed that tickets sell much better if you put things on particular dates, like the solstice, the equinox. People want to be there on that day, and so whether I can explain what that quality of time actually is, I think people feel it. They don't
Yeah.
need like there was this amazing moment where I went to Avebury on winter solstice and last year, and we turned up and there were thousands of people there, and I spoke to one of the organisers and he said, "Well, yeah, the problem we have is that the police get really cross us because they see all these people and they say, well, who's the organizer?" And we said, "We don't know. No one organised this." And I mean, the police were like, "Of course, there's an organizer. If there's this many people here, there must be an organizer. So who is it?" And the police don't believe them, and they say, "No, no, no. It's winter solstice today,
All,
so people just come because it's that time."
yeah.
And
Thing.
I was amazed by that because I suddenly thought, "Oh my goodness!" Like everyone just there's such a it's a draw that will just never go
Yeah.
away. Like our
It's
connection
in
to the
here.
sun is yeah, our
It's
connection
just
to the
in us,
sun
isn't it?
is yeah,
Yeah.
it's we
Yeah.
are connected to the sun. We're connected to like we
Yeah.
can't you can't like suddenly say that we're not. and also the thing about the sun aspect is everyone is, you can have all these different religions deciding when Easter is and when this is, but the sun is just the sun, and everyone can organize themselves around it. So it's like it's a kind of single point of reference everyone can agree upon. And yeah, I think so. There's that quality of time. Then there's this quality of inner time of how fast your life is moving, and um, like when you go on pilgrimage, probably say that time slows down, and your sense of what you're where you are traveling inwardly is longer. Sometimes you go through days and days you've sort of forgotten that they happened, but if you look back at the whole period and you think about it, like, wow, that felt like a really long time. Um, so
Mhm.
yeah, it's I haven't really ever been asked any of these questions before. I've never written about them, so I'm really replying on the fly.
Yeah, no, that's cool.
I didn't prepare like any answers because I didn't really know where you'd go. But I think
Guy, I think for me, Kira's time is inviting us to be present, isn't it? And that's what a pilgrimage it does. It isn't the ticking of the clock. We've got to get here at a certain, well, sometimes it is because you've got to do it in a day. But an extended pilgrimage is about expanding time. It's about that moment of, I suppose I hate using the word sacred these days because it's so overused, but this sort of returning to this sort of the divine spark or element within us. It's very, for me, it's about the Hermetic teachings, that part of us that is that spirit that needs to be rekindled, or we need to remember where we're from, or that we are part of something greater than us. I'll put it
yes,
that way. And I'm very interested. I actually did the Santiago to Compostela. I actually did it on a tandem. I didn't actually walk it, so I always felt I cheated. This is a long time ago now, but there was this sense. I mean, I love the fact Compostela, it's the field of stars. So
yeah, it's a good
pilgrimages are
point.
always it is about the field of stars, and I think you're called to it. But what do you feel like now? It's now for me, it's turning into something that you need to do. It's part of the I've done the the Compostela. And is it losing that divinity or that preciousness by
I
I've got to do it because that's the next thing to
yeah.
do. Do you know what I
Well, I
mean?
think yeah, I know exactly what you mean. I think we've got to go back to that point you're making about the journey of the soul. And
Yeah,
um, I think throughout all of history, there will have been people with this sort of "I need to do that," ticking off mindset. I think even in prehistoric Neolithic times, there will have been people who have had the mindset of "I just need to tick that off."
yeah, 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 yeah.
Why is it necessarily a modern problem? Like I think there are just people at different stages of their evolution in terms of the meaning they apply to things. And so for me, I see it not a problem. It's just life. It's that people
Yeah.
are saying, right, I'm going to tick that off. They go on it and maybe they do the ticking off mindset, but maybe something happens inside that which is a little bit different to what they actually had gone for. And they got something out of it that they may not be able to articulate. They may not talk about it to other people, but it will have shifted again. And sometimes they say things like, yeah, it was quite special actually. It was quite yeah, it was a bit different, like
Yeah.
they don't necessarily what, and they can't but there's something that's happened. And I think I just
Mm,
say, well, if they're walking in the countryside to sacred places and they're
yeah.
taking time out, just let them do it. Like, don't get in
That's
the
it.
way just because they're not doing it in the right way. Like, they will learn in their own
Yeah.
time at
Yeah.
their right pace for that person.
That's such a lovely thing to say because you, it is about timing, and as in astrology, we look at timing through the transits of the planets, making certain aspects to the natal planet, or we look at the progressed chart. How are you progressing in life? And I think, and obviously, Neptune is really important in our spiritual journey about whether we lose ourselves or we actually do have these moments of really connecting with something greater than us, or we have those Uranus moments when, the scales fall from our eyes and we go, oh my God, I see things differently. That's the great awakener. So I'm just
Mm,
so curious. It'd be so wonderful to have a look at people's charts who are on pilgrimages and why, and to see
yeah,
the astrological call that they've had. And I do believe that our chart calls us out, calls us forward to play it out. But this whole concept of pilgrimages for me it puts things at a completely different level, actually, of depth, I think, of reconnecting with the earth, with the sky, with, as you say, the sacred sites, those wonderful places of something greater than us.
yeah. I think that so I had a thought in my mind. It's just like, go on. Um,
It's a really annoying when that happens, isn't it?
yeah, it's so annoying. Uh, it was. I just. It's really funny, isn't it? How this happens.
Yeah, it'll come back.
Yes, it might do.
Maybe that,
um,
maybe it is because the earth and the sky are not really separate. We just think they are. They're both resonating with each other. I mean, this is the Hermetic teachings: as above, so below. As below, as below, so above. As within, so without. As without, so within.
mm,
And the
yeah,
pilgrimage. Go on.
I wonder if this is. I've remembered it now. I'm wondering if I've got a question for you, which is in astrology, have you heard of people saying to people, given your chart, now might be a good time to make a pilgrimage? Or this point in your chart, maybe you could start thinking about making a pilgrimage at this stage because of these conditions. Like,
Yeah.
is is that actually a thing? Has that ever been a thing?
It, I have never done that. What I've done is this may be a great time for you to start doing some personal development. Absolutely. And
Okay.
pyramid is, of course, a part of that. And, somebody, and thank you for that question, because if I saw a very prominent uh, um, Neptune, let's say, coming up to somebody's sun, and they are having very strange experiences of their relationship with God or whatever it is that
Yeah.
I would definitely say go on a pilgrimage then. Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
physically.
Well, good. Well, it'd be great to ask the community of astrologers if over time, given that pilgrimage is rising as a practice across the West, across the world, now in time, whether it could be it could be sort of integrated into astrology, so that people know the agreed upon kind of this is the most relevant
Yeah.
stuff for pilgrimage. I don't know how I wouldn't know where to start
I
myself,
think
but
Stephen Forrest would be very up for that because he's an evolutionary astrologer. Some astrologers aren't into pilgrimages or not necessarily into this conversation either. But
yeah,
it's about finding the right astrologers to do this. But I think this is a very interesting process because as we're going through such, and I do believe humanity is going through a massive shift.
yeah,
And some of us are very lost within that shift. And that's where pilgrimage can come back into our life to give us a structure or a purpose for this lostness or this, I don't understand what's happening. And
yeah,
it's that space that we create in pilgrimage to really have those depth of connection to ourselves and to the cosmos, but also to each other. People only go on pilgrimages because they want to, so you meet other pilgrims, and that
yeah.
starts a whole different conversations.
Oh yeah. Nice. There's so many reasons. The conversational side is another thing. Of like when people, that's also timing. I suppose then we haven't really talked about too much is timing of when you meet people, like the synchronicity side of this.
Yeah.
So the other thing that also happens on pilgrimage, as with my first pilgrimage to Heart Lake Bridge, is is that time gets organized for you. So you meet the right person at the right time. And it's because of this intense intention and the intensity of the intention. It does actually mean that I've never thought of that. Intensity and intention is so close. Um, uh,
Yeah, it is.
yeah, yeah.
They're
Uh,
bedfellows.
yeah, they are totally. And when it's the time is being organized around you. So you may meet a stranger or a companion may have something come into their life at this moment that then crosses with yours. Like that side of the timing of it is really key. And
Yeah,
people absolutely love the companion side of pilgrimage because it's so deep, not walking along, not looking directly at each other means you
yeah.
have this much more of a flow. And
To be there
and
for a
so
purpose. You set your intention. Well, when you get us in a group before we set off, there is this intention. And I think we're
yeah,
all carrying that intention. There's a reason for us to be there.
yeah,
Mm.
yeah. Yeah, I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued about how astrology views pilgrimage, and I think also the other thing that I have learned over time, like when we the first I don't know maybe 8 years, 10 years of what we're doing, we were like pilgrimage is a great lifestyle thing. You should do it whenever you can, like at the weekend if you don't know what to do, go on a pilgrimage. It was more that kind of messaging, which is kind of general and pretty generic. But it's not gonna. I don't think that's going to answer the question of why should I take 4 weeks out of my life now. And I think towards in the last 2 or 3 years, we realized actually this is about like big moments. There's something's happened in someone's life that would lead them to make to take out that time. And I think that's why astrology is really important because from what I understand and from what I've the chart readings I've had is the charts usually shows you when something big is happening to you in a certain
Completely.
dimension.
100%. But it's really interesting, if you think about the Hajj, and Muslims take that time out of their life to go on it. Or
Yeah,
I know the Hindus, certain Hindus, they go on pilgrimages because they take that time out to do that. It matters.
yeah.
It's part of their spiritual evolution. But perhaps it's because Henry VIII stopped our relationship with pilgrimages. Now that we can start bringing that back and being more conscious of how it may play out astrologically, astrological timing as well. I think this is really interesting.
I think yeah, it could be just Henry VIII. I think it's also the Enlightenment period of the rationalization of science and the disenchantment of the world that came
Yeah.
as a result of the Enlightenment. I mean, it's not even a controversial thing to say that the Enlightenment thinkers basically didn't really believe that the world was animate and didn't that it was alive and the vitalists in the kind of 19th century and later were the romantics. The poets that we all love, like Wordsworth, Keats, Byron, that kind of thing. They they understood the magic and the enchantment of nature, but Enlightenment science was basically saying it's all a bit of a myth and a bit kind of
Yeah.
just make it's a nice thing to make you feel better, but actually it's not true. And
Yeah.
and I think that also probably killed off the more internal side of pilgrimage and the idea that the land can speak to you. Like there may be many pilgrims that go out and don't think like this, and fine. Like
Yeah, for sure.
you don't
Sure.
need to believe it. But I think there's this sort of added dimension of when you actually feel by walking you are in some kind of relationship with the land or the animals or the people you meet and the trees you meet, and that
Yeah.
side of it I think is really crucial. I've
Well,
just spent yeah. So
I do think we're called by certain places through the spirit of the land. I do believe that. Sorry, you were
yeah.
just
Well, no, I've just spent 3 days at a conference in Switzerland with and one of one of my fellow speakers was Monica Galliano, who is this person who wrote Thus Spoke the Plant. And she was basically calling upon these sort of leading businesswomen in Switzerland to talk to plants, and learn from plants. And then someone said, "Oh, do you mean?" Sorry, I'm being called. Um, Do you mean what, so we're getting lots of information about plants through AI and we're learning lots from them and we do she goes, no, I don't mean that. But she didn't ever explain exactly what she did mean. But
Mm,
um someone's
yeah.
calling me, so I may have another meeting now, but I don't know.
Okay.
Um
Um, do you,
yeah,
well,
so and but in the end she said, no, no, I what she was really referring to is like in actual kind of dialogue.
yeah,
And
well,
like they actually speak to you and
they
um
do. There is a dialogue to be had. I speak to my
yeah.
plants every day. But
Mm.
again, and I'm so conscious of time. I could talk to you for hours. Is there something you'd just like to say to finish off this conversation that we're having?
Well, I can continue talking. I don't know how long you had planned, but uh, if I was to say, what's the, yeah, I'd say it's very simple. I think it's very simple. Think about the important time moments for you over the coming year, and think about maybe making a pilgrimage on those days at that period. So think about the relationship with time, your own life, and when you might want to make a pilgrimage, because astrologers are interested in the times and the movements of planets and that kind of thing, and anchor yourself in the right moment and the right place. So think about how the place relates to the time, relates to you. And then once you've triangulated all these things, you'll be in this kind of really, really potent space when you do finally set out.
Yeah, and then goodness knows what will happen.
Exactly. Exactly. The magic will start to
The
unfold and the
magic will
timings.
start.
Yeah.
Guy, I've absolutely loved this conversation. I can't tell you. I've just really loved it. Thank you so, so much.
Oh, thank you.
And I may get you, maybe later in the year we could get you back and have another chat about pilgrimages and how things are developing as well. So just for
Yeah.
that,
Well, now
thank
you've asked me all these questions, I'll probably have to go away and actually um, actually think about them in much deep, and it might become part of what I do now. So, yeah,
All right. So for everyone, thank you so much all for listening. And if you love this conversation, please give us a like and leave us a comment. We'd love to hear from you. Take care for now. Bye.
thank, thank you, Sue. Thank you, everyone.